Huh.
Hey guys, it's Dane at Jonah Guitars, and I got a brand new build series I'm going to start uploading. It's about this guy right here, the GECKO, and all of the whole process of building will be covered. It's going to be a very complete series. So I hope you join me, and we'll see you there. Okay, so I'll bring you in for a little bit of wet sanding, and you don't have to see a lot of this to know what wet sanding is about. And let's catch you up here. Okay. We had, what did I say? I know I just said this in a previous video. I think we had something like three or four go arounds with this thing. Maybe too heavy. I'll have to review it. I can't remember. I know I didn't want to spend a lot of time trying to put lacquer on this thing without sanding it back some to see how the grain fill was going. So I've kind of gone over the back here on the flat area, and I'm just I take a little wider view of this, but I'm not sure what you're really seeing because I am having trouble seeing it from where I'm at. I'll just bring you in a little bit there. So definitely still have grain that is not, that is sunken. I'm going to go ahead and keep sanding it down. Because even if I go all the way down to the wood, I'm not terribly concerned about that. I mainly want to see if I can get this grain to flatten out. So, and I am using naphtha or lighter fluid as my lube here, and I just mentioned this. I have no idea how long it'll be. Anyway, before this gets out, I'm kind of in the middle of uploading and posting the 74 Les Paul videos right now. So, but I just commented on another guy's channel that naphtha is not even legal in California. You can't buy a quart or a gallon of naphtha as a solvent. They outlawed it in California, but you can buy lighter fluid, and that's all that is naphtha. So the bottom line is, I just have to pay more for the same thing I used to be able to buy by the gallon or quart, and that's kind of annoying. Anyway, I've got 400 grit paper on just a little block, and I've talked about these blocks before. Just a little chunk of oak with a piece of rubber glued to it. It just helps keep the overall process, flat and level, and just gonna keep going at it here. At this stage of the game, it doesn't matter if you're going straight with the grain, cattywampus. I usually just do circles and just keep it lubed up. And it's just a whole bunch of this, and I'm not to the point where I'm going to be buffing anything out. This is just strictly to get this level down, and then I'll shoot more lacquer on it and once I have the grain leveled out and I have, you know, probably 4 to 6, maybe 8 coats of lacquer on it. Depends, how many coats I put on depends on how thick I shoot it. And it's a lot easier to shoot and it lays down a lot better when it's thinner, but you just got to put more coats on. So it's kind of not so much about how many coats, but about how much lacquer actually gets on the instrument. It's kind of hard to tell. If you remember the Washburn, that I measured the finish on that. I was able to pull a piece of the finish off of the part of the top that was broken out. And it was 50 thousandths thick. So that's pretty thick. And I know I've had instruments, older instruments, that were just really, really caked on. And I think that was the whole idea, was they just shot a lot of finish, and they didn't have to be as careful or maybe even fill grain at all. And I don't know if I mentioned this in a video before. I want to go back and watch, there's a Gibson video, the Gibson factory video from some time, you know, in the past, and showed these guys grain filling. Anyway, it's pretty amazing process done in a factory type situation like that. And these guys were artists. I want to look it back. I might make a link to it if I ever find it. I'll link it out of one of the videos. If I remember, maybe this video, since I'm talking about it. But I'm not going to confidently tell you right now that it'll be, or maybe I should. I know I'll review this when I edit it. Maybe I should tell you that. It's going to be in a link. Just go down there in the doobly-doo and click the link. And this is one of those pieces of paper I cut before that was a little too small for the block, so it kind of slips out a lot. Now, if I were finished sanding this to buff it right now, level sanding, and I was just starting out with this, I probably wouldn't start out with 400 if I were going for the buff. Probably start out with 6. And depending again on how much lacquer I think is on the instrument, and then how much orange peel I might have, would have a bearing on what grit I start with and how often I check. The main thing is when you're going for the buff, you only sand until it's flat, right? The orange peel's off, and then you change grits, and all you're doing every time you change grits is just you know, getting rid of the previous grit scratches with a coarser grit. So you go coarser to fine, and each time working to a finer grit, and eventually to a scratch that's so slight or so fine that you can buff it out. And this is like, be like buffing out plexiglass. It's just a plastic coating when it's all said and done, and you just get the scratches small enough that you can't see them anymore, and you fill those up with buffing compound, and it makes it shiny. And I'm going to wipe this off now, kind of see where we're at. As you can see, I've only done basically the butt end of the thing. And I'm just going to wet that a little bit. So now I have to hold it up and look at it and see how it looks. Actually, gotten it, that always sounds really wrong when I say it. I've actually got it to a point, or have it to a point that I'm not, there's definitely still some sunken grain area, but it's I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had it up in my eye level and it was out of camera level. Definitely think I've got the grain fill problem taken care of here. I've flattened that lacquer out and then shoot some more dryer coats on it so they don't sink as bad, and then wet it up a little bit. Yeah, that's looking good. That's the process, and so to get everything down, then I will shoot some dryer coats on it, and then just start getting the coats a little wetter and keeping kind of track of that, because you keep an eye and see how the more you wet the surface, the more things will conform to what's already there, right? So if you had low spots, or in this case grain that isn't completely filled, it's going to sink into that as you wet the surface. It will sink into that. So it's, if you can get some dryer coats on that and get up above where it will affect that lower level of the finish. Anyway, you can get away with a little bit that way. Oh, just an update on the peg head. I sanded that. I did put like 4 coats on that. 1 dry coat and 4 wetter coats. And you can see or not, there's a little bit of a shadow line around the lettering, and that's just where it's still shiny around the lettering, because the sanding wouldn't go right next to that. So we've got duller on the peg head, duller right on top, and a little more. I don't know if I can get an angle where you're going to see that or not, but yeah, you can sort of see they're shiny right around the letters. So that'll continue to get layered onto more lacquer on that. Well, all right, guys. So as you know, we've done I sanded back the first few coats of lacquer after all that grain fill, and the idea was to sand it back, see if we'd gotten most of the pore fills adequate, and it turns out that we still need a little bit, but I just decided to shoot a few more coats of lacquer on it. I think that I'm going to, well, I know I'm going to sand it back again, but it looks like at this point that I've gotten the vast majority of the pores filled on the thing. So I think after another sand back, which I'll do with 600, and then a few more coats, we're going to let this thing hang and cure out. And I just shot 3 coats on this today, and I can see for myself, I mean, close eyeball, I can see quite a few. I can see a couple spots where I might have a little bit of grain sinking in yet, but it looks pretty amazing. And the little GECKO guy there. Anyway, that's the obviously the front, and then the mahogany on the back. If you look across the glare there, you would see, if it were sinking in, you'd see it. So the back actually did really well, and so I'm going to let this, before I start to sand back, I'm going to let it hang for a day or two, and like I said, I'll sand it back with 600 and see how it looks. And I think that we're definitely got it going the way I want it to go. I'm loving this walnut. That obviously this hasn't been sanded out and buffed, but that's just going to be an amazing looking guitar when that's all said and done there. Anyway, all right, that's it. Just a real quick update. We'll catch you later. All right, guys. Last time I was out here, shot a few coats on it. You probably just saw it in the very last sequence. 3 coats of lacquer. It's been hanging for a couple days. I was out here on a Sunday afternoon, evening. It's now Tuesday evening. I've just been sanding the back with some 600 and let's see. Okay, it's actually doing really good. I've got a little section here that I haven't sanded completely out yet. And I'm just going to point you down at that, and I'm using an eraser. Let's see which way we need to go to get you more into the. There we go. Using an eraser, pink eraser, and I'm using water with a drop of soap in it. I've done all of this area and this area, and I've tentatively started over here. So I've kind of made one pass with it over here, and it's pulling this down. It's taking it right down. I'm seeing very, very few grain. Places where it's sinking into the grain a little bit, and it's very, very minimal. I suspect I'll have to wait and see, but I'm thinking at this point I may not shoot any more lacquer on this thing. I may just start progressing up through the rest of the grits. Like I said before, I've got about three good coats on this. That's going to be, plus what was already on it, and that was, there were a few coats there. So I did sand that back quite a bit. The goal and the balancing act here is to get enough lacquer to seal the instrument, of course, and to give you the finish you desire, but not have so much on. And it's an electric guitar, and I've been pretty blunt about what I think about electric guitars and tone woods. I've even built a Formica acoustic guitar to more or less prove a point. I've seen a lot of other people do that sort of thing. You can, I'm not going to argue the point that wood will make a difference. How significant a difference? Because there's solid plexiglass guitars out there that sound okay. Sound good even, and so it's going to have some bearing on a little, some stuff. Anyway, I'm being kind of vague, but that's not necessarily intentional. The tone wood issue on electric guitars gets kind of all blown out sometimes. You're going to craft your tone more with how your pickups are wound, and probably what gauge strings you play, and what amp you're playing it through, and how you have your tone settings and all that kind of stuff. I was kind of the other way for a while. You know what? Everybody's talking about how much difference wood makes, and but I've built some guitars where I wasn't that well. I built one guitar specifically, and if I ever demo that one, I'll talk about it specifically then. I've still got a little bit of grain that I can see right in here, but then again, if I were to leave this, if I were going to recoat it, I'd leave it right there. But also, if I were going to go to another grit, I would probably leave that and go to another grit rather than try to sand much deeper than this. I got a little bit right up around here. Just trying to remember where I just left off. Oh, I built a guitar that, and I used EMG passive ceramic pickups, and it was so treble spiky that I couldn't tolerate it. And I thought, wow, I've got to try something else. And I swapped them out for a not as hot a wind with an Nichols pickup. Alnico magnet pickup, and it's a really great sounding guitar now. And so you can craft the sound you want with your electronics. That's not the case with an acoustic guitar, and acoustic guitars are definitely affected by timbre type and also thickness. Also, where the X brace crosses high or low or middle, closer to the sound hole, farther away from the sound hole. There are a lot of factors there. That you can't fix with the pickup. You still can put an electronic pickup in an acoustic guitar and actually change the sound. Anyway, this wasn't intending to go in this direction at all. But you still shoot for not having a gob of finish on an instrument. That's where I rabbit trailed, was on the thickness part of that. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing. I'm sanding this back right now. I'm done with the back. I'm going to work on this little tummy cut here and see what it looks like. It's pretty flat. I'm not going to run this for a long time. I just kind of wanted to give you an update, let you see where I was and what was going on. And this is where I am, and this is what's going on. So I'm going to turn you off again. Bring you back in after I see how the front goes, or maybe during the front, just so I'll know if so I know what I'm going to do. If the front's, I could still spray some more lacquer on the front without reshooting the back, and I may do that. So it just depends on how things go here. Okay, bye for now. And I should mention I'm sanding with water. I did mention it, but I should explain that. I was previously sanding with naphtha or lighter fluid, and that was the last time I was sanding, and I was still using naphtha just because I didn't want to go into the house and get water. I don't have a sink out here, access to water other than my spray bottle. And now I'm to a point that all of these holes and edges of holes have been filled with lacquer, so there's no issue with water getting into the body at this point. So I don't have to really worry about that. And so that's why I'm okay with water at this point. Otherwise I would not be. And we're just starting on the front with the 600. And I'm using the pink eraser this time. It even says pink eraser on it. And I can't tell with the way the camera's facing if you're seeing that upside down or not, so we'll go both ways. Pink eraser. So, and it's a little softer. It's definitely got, bend to it. And so I'm holding it right in the middle, trying not to force one into the other. But the main reason I decided to use it at this point is because of the carved top. And I thought I could do a lot of the carved top with the eraser without having to just rely solely on the ends of my fingers. And as you know, if you've done much of this or if you've watched much of this, you've heard it explained before that your fingertips will create grooves in the finish because you just inadvertently push harder with different fingers, and it could very could create a problem for you. So in a situation like this, I'm definitely taking, getting all the flat up here. This is a pretty mild carve. Other guitars I've done, Les Paul copy in particular, had quite a bit more severe carve on it than this guitar does. And so I'm pretty much just taking all the flat area. All this area right around here is pretty flat. Now this from up here angles down to take care of the neck angle, and the bottom of the neck pocket parallels the top of the guitar here. It's not a super serious neck angle because I have a Telly style bridge on this guitar, so I didn't need a lot of a neck angle. Not what I would need if I were using a Gibson style tom bridge or a wrap, like a junior stop end bridge. So, at any rate, the softer the block, then I can roll down into this area and sand without catching corners that I would be if I were using this harder block. I would be hitting corners down in here, and you don't want to do that. I will, roll off like this, and then I'll come back with my fingers and just make sure that I've gotten everything. But I'll do the majority of it with the eraser. And mentioned before, I'm sure it doesn't matter what direction you go when you're on top of the lacquer. You wouldn't want to sand wood like this, but on the lacquer it doesn't matter. And that's about all I'm going to do on camera, because it's kind of self-explanatory at this point, and it's not that interesting. So, let you go again.